Children of a Karen. What is it like? Story 1. When my siblings and I were younger, she was great, but she'd become more insufferable as she'd get older. She has 2 voices, a talking to us voice and a talking to other people voice. Her other people's voices are very serial killer-like. She tells us not to shop at certain stores or stay at certain types of hotels when we travel because they are, quote, ghetto. She's never ever wrong for anything. Even when I tear an argument of hers to shreds, she makes me apologize. I've never received an apology from her in my life, even when she screamed in my face for absolutely no reason. She's not exactly the let me speak to your manager type, but she will leave crappy reviews on Google or Facebook if she doesn't like the service. Speaking of which, she is the queen of Facebook. The first couple months of the pandemic, she wouldn't stop posting about how we all need to go back to living. Now that the protests have started, she's been ranting about how she didn't sit in the house for 2 months for it to be ruined by protesters. I've had to learn to just ignore it and be thankful I don't live with her anymore. It may also be worth mentioning my mom is a second-generation Karen. My grandma is the literal textbook definition of Karen. She's almost 80 years old, and I still can't go to restaurants with her because I never know what she's going to say or do. My generation's Karen seems to be my brother. However, my fiancé already knows that if I ever start showing any traits of Karen, then he is to immediately put me out of my misery. Okay, in my opinion, it's kind of a shame that the name Karen has been associated with such negativity, because the one Karen in my life, Plankton's wife, she doesn't deserve to have her name dragged through the mud. She's already married to Plankton, and if anybody knows what Plankton's first name is, maybe we should be using that as a negative term because he's actually evil. It's Sheldon, by the way. Story 2. It was humiliating. My mother treated everyone in the service industry as if they were idiot peasants placed there to serve her exclusively. However, she usually never brought her children out in public, so I was spared the majority of her behavior. She has always looked shockingly young for her age, and it always seemed like she had kids really young, so that was a part of it. The other part was that she hated how I looked. We were an Asian family, and I was always overweight, a complete taboo for women. She would comment about my appearance to every single stranger she could. Doctors, Target employees, other kids, etc. Whenever she was forced to buy me clothing, she would comment to every worker how nothing looked good on me because I was ugly and fat. Then she would proceed to insult the workers. I always felt so ashamed by both actions that I could never look anyone in the eye. I could feel their pity radiating out, and it was humiliating. I didn't want anyone to feel bad for me. I didn't want their dang sympathy. I didn't want to be a major point of ridicule. It has led to a lifetime of having too much pride. It's hard to laugh at myself now, and I take myself way too seriously. I struggle to act less serious, but I spent so much time being laughed at, I can't take it, and I hate it when anyone talks crap about anyone, even if they deserve it. I have openly refused to trash talk a non-public figure for a long time. It's always toxic, especially if you wouldn't say it to their face. My mother would also use her first language to openly insult people all the time. She bled entitlement. It was horrific. Sounds like a brutal childhood. Double whammy too if your mom is both a Karen and an Asian parent. I hear those guys are pretty strict. But there you go, that's me stereotyping based on a non-true public opinion. And since I mentioned public, I do like how this person just blanket statement refuses to trash talk any non-public figure. That's kind of a nice way to go about life if you can manage it. Though it makes me wonder, how public of a public figure do you have to be to then warrant the ridicule that comes with being a public figure? I mean, just speaking for myself, I am the voice of this YouTube channel, and that certainly seems to be enough to make some people at least speak their minds openly about what they think about me. But that just comes with the territory of being on the internet and being connected to an infinitely anonymous amount of people on the internet. I definitely love the internet. That's why I do the voice for this channel, talking about things from the internet. So you hereby have my permission to lay it on me. Speak your mind, whatever you want to say about me specifically, I give you the go-ahead. But keep it at that. Do not extend it to my family or my dog. And I say that because I've been mistaken more than once in public for a Mr. Keanu Reeves, and we all know what he's capable of. So, watch your step. Story 3. When I was a child, everything was someone else's fault. We'd speak to managers in stores, restaurants, etc. When I came of age, I joined the military and moved away as fast as possible. As an adult, my relationship with her was terrible. I was so frustrated by her asking me to come back to visit her area every time we talked that I just stopped talking to her. Something particularly interesting happened this past year. I went home to see my grandma on my dad's side as she was passing. I called my mom and told her I was taking an emergency trip and would be in the area, but wouldn't have time to see her. Her response? "That's fine, I understand your family needs you." I was beside myself. I had known that she was working on herself for a while, but living so far away and speaking so little, I hadn't witnessed it. 5 years ago, she would have demanded that I leave my dying grandma to come see her. I came back to the area the next month and we discussed it more. She said that she realized that a lot of problems in her life and a lot of the unhappiness stems from selfishness. I'm incredibly proud of the changes she's made in her life, and it has forced me to reevaluate my own actions pertaining to our strained relationship and my life as a whole. And I've come to a conclusion. I'm just like her. Story 4. Really terrible. She would yell at any person trying to help her if they said anything she just didn't like or agree with. Not only do I have anxiety from all that horse crap, but I also now go out of my way to be nice to anyone providing me a service, as much as I can. I also make it my mission to make them laugh so they can be comfortable. My husband and I try to trade stories of when we can get people to laugh or smile. One time that sticks with me is when my couch was being delivered by Macy's. I was just in the living room doing my usual stuff of saying funny things and just being my weird self, trying to make the two guys comfortable in my home. One of the guys stopped as he was cleaning up all the plastic that the couch was wrapped in and said to me, "Thank you for being so nice. Most people don't even look at us." I was floored. Not for the compliment, but that people would treat another human being that way. Just terrible. Also, shout out to my dad for always teaching me to be kind. My husband and I once took him out to Outback Steakhouse for his birthday, and when the waiter came to take our order, my dad insisted he sat down in the booth next to him because he didn't think he should have to stand to wait on us. I know that's where I get my kookiness from, but I love it. Being kind takes no effort. I have to agree with that last statement. Being kind really doesn't take that much effort at all. In fact, back in high school, my senior superlative was kindest. Now, I didn't actually work for this. I think it was just because I respected people's boundaries and I treated them well and I was quiet. I never stepped on anyone's toes, and I guess that minimal amount of effort just led to people thinking of me as someone who was kind. But need I remind you that I am capable of dark and insidious things should I be pressed. Story 5. My mom will always want to see the manager for whatever slight thing. Once she waited in line at the service desk for something like half an hour because she thought she was overcharged a few cents for 2 bottles of dish liquid that was on sale. Then she gets up there to complain, and she discovers that she was actually undercharged quite a bit. So she complained about not paying enough, and the manager said he would have to write up the cashier for the undercharge. But she can have the items. Like, who wastes that much of their life on this stuff? She picked me up from the airport when I was coming back from a trip to apply to graduate school, and she accidentally parked in the overnight lot. When she went through the gate, the attendant said, $20. She blew up and threw an unholy fit. The entire car was shaking. She was going to get them fired somehow. I was just trying not to make eye contact, as I was really embarrassed by this. I'm bound for graduate school, and my white trash mother is screaming at parking lot attendants because she parked in the wrong lot. The attendants finally just raised the gate, and she gunned it out of the lot. And to this day, she brings up this story as if it was a win. Story 6. Probably too late to the thread for anyone to notice, but let me just say that it is absolutely miserable. I can't go anywhere with her without her having some kind of meltdown. She can't even go to a restaurant without complaining about something. Nothing is ever her fault. Everything is always someone else's fault, especially if they're an employee. She thinks the world owes her everything on a silver platter, and if she doesn't get it right now, then they're practically conspiring against her to make her life miserable. A basic example, one time we went to Burger King's drive-thru, and after she's already paid, she asks the guy who hands her the food for a cup of Big King sauce on the side. They tell her they can't do that because they'd have to charge her for it. She responds to this by practically ripping the bag out of his hand and screaming, "Oh, I thought this was Burger King. Whatever happened to have it your way, witch?" And then peeling out of the drive-thru. Of course, I chewed her out about it, but it's no use. She'll never change. She's infuriating to be around. Story 7. My mom is a Karen to service people sometimes. She can range from mildly rude to a total monster at times. I used to make excuses, like one time when she was working as a realtor and in the middle of buying something retail, stepped away a bit to take a phone call. The lady had this obvious, "Are you kidding? That couldn't wait another minute to finish this?" kind of expression. I tried to smooth it over, like, "Oh, sorry, she's at work, always, even when she's not at work," kind of thing. Lady responded, "It's still rude," and that, to be honest, was the first moment I realized, yeah, my mom is rude. Now, if she's unreasonable, I straight up tell her off. Usually ends in the two of us fighting and me apologizing to whoever just got yelled at. The worst was after my grandma passed away, she took her feelings out on everyone. After her being rude to a waitress for no reason, my brother told me to ease up since she just lost her mom. I replied, every one of us here just lost a person we love, but they give her no right to treat others like crap, especially for no reason. Story 8. My mom's a semi-Karen, but my aunt is an uber Karen. So when there's a family dinner with her present, I make sure to sit as far away as possible because the embarrassment is too much to handle. Her thing is to try to create her own meal by using elements of at least 3 other meals on the menu. I want the herb-crusted chicken, but roasted instead of grilled, and the sauce from the pork tenderloin, can you put it on the side? And instead of grilled asparagus, can you do the pot stickers appetizer for the side? But only 2 because I can't eat 4, and I don't want to get charged for 4. She does this at low-end chain restaurants. The goal is to make sure they mess up the order somehow, and then she relishes sending it back. Then, as the waiter is leaving, she says loud enough for them to hear, "I mean, it's pretty hard to screw up." I've seen her accidentally create a Franken meal that happened to be really close to something already on the menu. That's when she makes a few last-minute modifications or makes up a deadly allergy to something, so it remains complicated. Story 9. My dad is a Karen. KFC once forgot to put barbecue sauce in our order, and he spent a full half hour writing an angry email. Next time I went in with him to get KFC, he had a printout to scan for store credit. He also enjoys yelling at CS reps on the phone, customer service reps that is, especially when they're in a foreign call center. To be fair to him, he yells on the phone even when he's being happy. I can hear him from outside the house. But even if it's not malicious, there's no way it doesn't come across that way on the other end. If I'm in a store or a restaurant and I witness a Karening, is there anything I can do to help? Seems like any intervention would only raise her Karen-ness. Although I don't mind taking some heat off of a poor worker. Any ideas, real or hilarious? The Karen dad, rarely seen in the wild, but I'm glad we get to talk about it here. I think the equivalent of asking to speak to the manager for a Karen dad is writing a sternly written letter, or in this case an email. Story 10. My aunt is a Karen. Quite frankly, or quite Karenly, both our families flat out ignore her. She has no relationship with her kids. We didn't realize how much it impacted our lives until we grew up and saw that kind of behavior just makes everyone hate you. The only people that put up with her are Karen's husband and my mom, her sister. Even then, the marriage is basically done. The number of times I heard the squeaky wheel gets the grease just makes me cringe to look back on. She was so proud of it every time, too. Then I grew up and got a service job, and it immediately sunk in. The squeaky wheel gets replaced. The bare minimum to just get them to shut up and get out the door, and you're remembered from that point on as a problem. So in the end, everyone hates her, including her own children. Story 11. Infuriating. Both my mom and dad are awful to shop assistants, despite the fact that I worked in the sector for 20 years. Neither of my parents read shelf signage properly, but if there's a price discrepancy, it's always the fault of the cashier, and they're very fond of the "you're not doing your job properly" argument. Even if it's a penny difference, they'll kick off. I've seen my mom reduce people to tears before. Mom also uses her disability to her advantage and will scream for the manager, throwing the "it's because I'm disabled" card around, and will then be nice as anything when the manager appears. They both shoplift too, and see nothing wrong with it. I'm more than happy to help my parents with their shopping, but I have to walk away once they go to pay because it's so exhausting. Story 12. My sister is Karen in recovery, and her teenage kids are mortified by her. They had a Karen intervention with her a few months ago and pointed out that about 1 out of every 3 visits to a restaurant results in a meal or a drink sent back, and about 1 in 10 results in a conversation with the manager. Unresolved complaints over the phone practically have a pre-written script. This is unacceptable, poor customer service, etc. She's trying to be more self-aware because she now recognizes that not only can her behavior be embarrassing, but she's a Karen caricature. A Karen-cature. If someone described the typical Karen by looks, age, race, tone of voice, social standing, they would be describing her to a T. Sure, it's Karen shaming, but we're living in a society here. Story 13. My mom will always exaggerate everything. She's got to keep up with her friends while they complain about how their kids are doing drugs, shoplifting, sneaking out. My mom talks about how I said the word crap and makes it seem like I cussed out an adult right before red-rumming them. I'm almost an adult, and I'm not allowed to swear. And yes, the child swear words count too. Any word that can be used as an insult counts, you stupid head. Story 14. My mom isn't really a full-on Karen, but if she is very hungry, she gets hangry to a new level. She'll get ticked off because she can't decide what to order and then take it out on the waiters. They get an attitude from my mom, and I feel so bad. I want to apologize to them, but then again, that would make my mom mad at me. Also, when she's in public, she'll randomly stare at people and be like, "Does she not own a hairbrush?" Or some other comment like that. It's extremely embarrassing, and I want to hide under a rock whenever she does it. I've started telling her to stop, but then she gets upset with me like, "What? They can't hear me." But I clearly saw them look at you when you said it. Any advice? Story 15. I grew up in Texas, but my parents are originally from Tennessee. When we were visiting Tennessee once, she remarked about how few Tennessee state flags were flown compared to the number that you see in Texas, so she thought they could use a little more state pride. She wrote letters to a few congressmen, and I think even the governor's office, to tell them to fly more flags. The next time we visited, she'd point out every Tennessee flag we saw. Obviously, you couldn't prove it was because of her, but admittedly, there were a lot more that trip. Too long didn't read. My mom asked to speak with the manager of a whole state and got her way. Story 16. My mom was actually named Karen. Her hair is the cut of actual meme Karen. Living with her was heck. She's no longer in my life. I have so many crazy horror stories, I doubt many would believe me. She was a radiologist, so she has frick you money to top it all off. It was awful. So bad, my sister and I made it convenient for my very Catholic father to divorce her. He was an attorney, and she managed to get her doctor pals to label her disabled, so my father, who earned much less than her, had to pay her $270,000 for the privilege. The final straw for me was she only paid attention to my daughter. When we had my son, she wanted nothing to do with him. Story 17. The problem with being raised by a Karen is that sometimes you too are a Karen. Even though I worked in the restaurant and retail and call center industries to put myself through college, sometimes my own Karen will still rear her ugly head. Example, some poor soul at the IRS call center had to hear my ugly voice in the background while my husband was talking to them on the phone. Afterward, I felt awful that I let my stress get the best of me. If I could send that woman a pack of beer and a manicure, I would. My poor husband also. Most of the time, I am not this way, but I had to teach myself how to behave because my mom was a terrible example growing up. Story 18. Lots of nodding along and desperately searching for an opportunity to make a joke that lightens the mood or changes the subject. Very rarely am I asked outright for my thoughts, and when I am, I make an absurd joke to make it clear I have no interest in discussing it. She asked me how I voted once, so I said I was confused by the ballot, so I just checked everything off. That's what I was supposed to do, right? I also don't make a lot of eye contact during those topics, and especially if I'm not the only one there, I kind of distance myself a bit, engage with my nieces or the dog or something until I hear the topic has changed. Story 19. My mom is a reformed Karen. When I was a kid, she used to treat people in customer service like trash. When I was a teenager and in customer service positions, it finally dawned on her what a terrible human being she was being. She's turned around and been great ever since. I'm proud of her for recognizing her faults and fixing them. I worked at a grocery store pushing carts for like 7 years while I was making my way through high school and college. And even though my parents were never Karens from the get-go, it definitely helps to have someone that you know personally on the other side of things so that you can really sympathize with what it's like to be in the service industry. Story 20. My stepmom is a certified Karen. Honestly, it's mortifying to go anywhere in public with her. We went to Disney last year and she made this huge fuss that we weren't staying at the freaking Ritz-Carlton. Then she loudly complained to the dining cast members at Pop Century, what a dump, when they didn't cook her specialty burger before everyone else's order. The kicker is that we, my husband and I, footed the bill for a lot of their vacation, but she never once said thank you. My real mom passed away of cancer and never would have been such a Karen. Story 21. It's like having a boss more than a mom. A boss who micromanages you from sweeping the floor to eating your pasta. A boss who complains nonstop about anything and everything. A boss who always says bad things to the CEO, Dad, behind his back. She never runs out of things to ask you to do. It's torture. I don't even want to talk to her or stay in the same room with her. Thankfully, I was able to leave home now. We still fight when I come to visit my parents, but it's seldom now because I don't visit them much. Story 22. My mom was slowly treading down the path to Karenhood. I would just hang my head and be embarrassed, but I didn't really know why it was so wrong. Well, a few years in retail fixed that right the frick up. So when that stuff started up again, I calmly explained that she's getting prissy at the wrong person and has to follow the same rules everyone else does. She shouldn't expect special treatment just because she's angry. Fortunately, she took the road less traveled and tried to be more understanding and calm. Story 23. My grandma is banned from most stores in 3 countries. Before my hometown turned into a regular suburb, it was a semi-rural small town. In those times, I could bring up her name and strangers would cringe. She wasn't a regular Karen, though. She's an unapologetic white supremacist, so I don't blame them. We haven't spoken with her in a decade or so. Story 24. I have my patients who are children, and their Karen mothers are probably the worst of my job. I feel bad for the kids and husband the most, to be honest. Story 25. My mom once had some strong Karen tendencies, but she started channeling that Karen energy into activism, community service, and advocating for people, and it morphed into assertiveness and tenacity rather than rudeness. Honestly, she's an inspiration to me because she took what was an issue for her and turned it into something positive that helps others. Excuse me, sir, you're sitting on my body, which is also my face. No, be assertive. Beep beep. Not insertive. Story 26. Frankly, it's embarrassing. You have to sit there while they shriek at a manager and cause a big scene. If you try to chime in and you get yelled at, then they're in a bad mood the rest of the day. I've sat through hour-long debates with managers over the 11-cent disparity on a bill. Everyone is looking at you and you're just kind of trapped there. Story 27. You have to realize no matter how many times you tell them their behavior is wrong or that they're just wrong in general, it will get you nowhere. I cannot tell you how many times my mom has said some ridiculous crap, and if you say anything other than, yeah, I agree, she plays the victim card. Story 28. My sisters are Karens, so entitled and self-obsessed. She's never not sent a meal back at a restaurant. I figure she's eaten a lot of spit. Story 29. My mom represents the complete opposite of Karen, besides being named Karen. To be honest, the stereotype gets a bit annoying because she really is a reasonable and understanding person. Love my mama. Story 30. My sister's mother-in-law has another sister who's Karen. She proves the stereotype beyond a shadow of a doubt. I have no idea how she hasn't had a stress-induced heart attack from that woman yet. Story 31. My dad is a male Karen. I always hated listening to him call customer service on the phone because he's such a complete butthole to whoever is just trying to do their job. FYI, a male Karen is called a Kevin. Story 32. I'm constantly wondering if the next white woman to go viral for calling the police on an unsuspecting black person will be my mother. Story 33. My mom is somewhat of a Karen, mostly in regard to restaurants, and I have an anxiety disorder. It's a combination made in heck. Well, there you go. You can count the number of SpongeBob references that I've sprinkled throughout the script there. I've been trying to add a bit more personality to the commentary. I'm doing the same thing over on Mainly Facts channel while he's out on commission. And also, since I've already revealed my identity over there to some extent, I figure I could do the same for you guys. So, hello. My name is Shepard. I'm the voice of Internet Recap and a bunch of other YouTube channels. But for now, I will leave those as a bit of a mystery. Unless you'd really like to know, we can speculate in the comments. But for now, I'm just happy to be here and talk to you guys about random stuff on the internet. Thanks for being here. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.